ABCD!
Well, hello again, happy campers. Welcome back. Spike here. I want to thank you both for geeking out. Yeah, you've probably noticed a little something that's been added here. It's been a little while since I've done this. My apologies for not posting more often. It's just having some issues with one of my legs, so it's my right leg's been acting up. I've been getting pain off and on. Usually when I'm either involved in strenuous activity or I sit for long periods of time. So these podcasts are going to be a little bit shorter than normal as I record these. For those of you on audio, you haven't seen what's been added here. I've got 3 weeks worth of facial growth now. So it's been a weird couple of weeks. Like I said, 3 weeks worth of growth here. We'll see how it goes over. I figured the reason why I'm wearing the beard and mustache right now is that all the hair is trying to pour off the top of my head anyway. So instead of shaving off all of it that's working its way down, I figured I'd just let it grow and see if it would stick around for a while. One, yes, I've got the little white patches here. I got a little white patch here. So yes, I'm old. And the other thing that they never mention when it comes to facial hair is itchy. Why is it so itchy? But 3 weeks in, it's getting a little bit better, but we'll see what happens as it goes along. Today, in this episode anyway, I wanted to talk about a couple of studios and how they are treating their intellectual properties. This one's going to be a little involved, so just bear with me here a minute. I'm going to be talking about Disney and Warner's. Disney and Warner Brothers are two studios that have gotten to the point where they're treating their intellectual properties like crap, but for two entirely different reasons. I especially want to focus on their animation divisions. So we'll talk on that here. In the meantime, you can always find us online on X, at Who, What, Where. You can find us on our preferred video provider, which is Rumble. You can still find us on YouTube, and you can also find us on Spotify or wherever you get your audio podcasts. I want to talk first about Disney. Disney has been really striking out quite a bit here lately. They've had a lot of projects coming out, especially from the Marvel and Star Wars departments. Marvel, if you remember the last episode I did, I reviewed the new Daredevil series, season 4. I reviewed, talked about the Star Wars series. Holy cow, I can't think of it right now. The one with the kids in it, I can't remember what it was. I do need to make an adjustment on my call for Daredevil season 4. It started off really strong, and if I recall correctly, I gave it a 5 out of 5. That was for the first 3 episodes. It pretty much petered out after that and kind of struggled as it went along. By the end of the series, we do have Daredevil back in his outfit, and spoiler alert, the Kingpin's the mayor of New York. That's not changing. But, oh boy, Disney has, especially Marvel Television, has this bad habit of taking what would be a 6-episode series and stretching it out to 8 or 10. And that's what happened to Daredevil. It really had about 4 episodes worth of story, and they had to stretch it out to 8. So when you do that, like I said, it started off strong in the first 3 episodes, and then it's slogged, and we get sidetracked into some serial killer who paints with his victim's blood, which seemed like it'd be a good idea, but it really did just seem like it was just thrown into the middle of everything, and they pretty much just stretched it out, filled it. That's because we'll get into that in a minute. Won't give a final grade for Daredevil. Like I said, the first 3 episodes, season 4 started out strong. The last few episodes absolutely dragged and also dragged down the score. I'm going to take Daredevil down from a 5 to a 3, and it's barely hanging on to a 3. I almost gave it a 2.5. But it just, the slog, all the extraneous stuff, didn't focus on the plot, didn't focus on the character development, and just basically ran out of steam after episode 3. So I look like an idiot for giving it a 5 out of 5. The entire series, first 3 episodes still get their 5, but episodes 4 through 8, right up through the conclusion, I'm going to knock it. I would knock it down to a 2 for the last 5 episodes. We'll say it evens out at about a 3. Okay, just barely a 3. We're talking 3.0. So, sad stuff, but that's what happens. The reason why they're stretching this out is because Disney, Marvel, Kevin Feige's outfit, they are determined they want a particular number of episodes, but the writers are only capable of coming up with so many plot points, so many beats and story beats in order to tell their story. So when you go from 4 episodes worth of story, one which would have done great with a 4-hour miniseries, and you turn it into a full 8-hour season, you wind up with 50% filler. And that's a corporate edict. That's coming down from the top. That's coming down from Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, and it's coming down from Kevin Feige in charge of Marvel. And the same thing has been happening with Star Wars, although Star Wars is a little bit different in that it usually starts crappy and stays crappy and then ends crappy. And that's Kathleen Kennedy in charge of Lucasfilm. Disney has been treating their intellectual properties with a lot of, shall we say, neglect. They are interfering with everything. They are causing consternation left and right. You've got so many episodes you have to fill, even if you don't have the story to fill it. And honestly, that's fault on the writers as well, because they're not doing a proper job of pacing it out. Daredevil has better writing than, say, Agatha All Along, or like Captain America Brave New World. The Thunderbolts came and went while I was out, and that one, I didn't even bother watching it because I knew it was just going to be a train wreck, and I didn't bother. And sure enough, it did all right in its opening season, and then after that, it just kind of just fell apart. The Thunderbolts are supposed to be the new Avengers, blah, blah, blah. We now have Avengers Doomsday coming up. They've already started filming on that, and the story, Scuttlebutt has it. Good old Chris over here with the Scuttlebutt. Scuttlebutt has it. They don't even have a working script. They're just coming up with stuff each day and sending it out to the sets to be filmed. That's not a good way to tell a story, guys. You really need to have your plots settled. You got to understand who's involved. You really got to sit there and plan out your storyline. You can't just make it up on the fly, because that's not storytelling. That's improv at best. Anthony Mackie went through that with Brave New World. He was begging the producers for a script, and never really got one. That's why they had to keep going back and doing round after round after round of reshoots. Disney has this bad habit of abusing their intellectual properties. They're exploiting them by just rehashing the same crap over and over. It's lazy storytelling. And when you hire, let's be honest, when you have a bunch of hires based on the representation as opposed to their actual talent, well, what you wind up with is garbage in, garbage out. It's an age old story. So that's been affecting Marvel for quite a while, since roughly Avengers Endgame. It's been affecting Star Wars for, I would say, all the way back to the first prequel. I didn't like the prequels at all, even though George Lucas was involved with those, but I just didn't care for those three. Uh, I know your mileage may vary, but pretty much everybody hates the three sequels that came out after that. So again, when I think the problem with Disney is that you have a bunch of MBAs in charge. MBAs are Masters of Business Administration. You got a bunch of managers in charge instead of people who understand the storytelling process, the creative process, the idea of coming up with a vision and executing. It's sad because Disney has a lot of good properties. Their next project coming out is Lilo and Stitch. That's going to be coming out. As I record this, it's Sunday, May 18th. It will be coming out Friday the 23rd, I believe. It is sitting here thinking, yes, Friday the 23rd. That's this coming Friday as I record this. And it's been getting a lot of good press because basically they're largely sticking to the plot, but there are people who are upset because there are characters missing. You don't have the animation style. You've got the CGI involved with Stitch and all the other little creations that are coming down to earth. You have live action actors involved doing the human part, and you can tell that a lot of the characters, a lot of these aliens, are being pushed into human guises just as a way to try to save money on the CGI effects. As long as the story is told well and effectively, and Lilo and Stitch is a good story, as long as the story is being told well, it doesn't matter so much. All the little touches and stuff, hiring a lot of extra human parts instead of a lot of CGI empowered alien parts, I can understand that. And yeah, it does save. Odds are they're predicting that this Lilo and Stitch is going to open anywhere from 120 to 160 million dollars opening weekend because there's nothing else out there. This is the first big summer blockbuster. I am hoping that Lilo and Stitch does better. I hope people enjoy it. I hope it's enjoyable. Whether I'll go see it or not, I don't know. I didn't care that much for the original cartoon. I did see the original animated movie. I did see some of the animated TV series that followed after it. It did all right, but it's not my cup of tea. Whether I review it next week, hopefully I get another episode out next week. Whether I review it next week or not, that's anybody's guess. So we'll see what happens there. Coming up next for Disney will be Fantastic Four. That will be coming out right around the 4th of July weekend. And I love the Fantastic Four. You guys know I just adore the four. The family dynamic, especially the Imaginaut angle. There's just so much to love about the Fantastic Four, but nobody in Hollywood can seem to figure this out. And like I said, when you got a bunch of managers who are running the studio instead of a bunch of people who understand the creative process, and this is what you get. We've got people in charge of Marvel right now who just don't understand. They're not Ike Perlmutter. They're not, especially not Avi Arad. Avi Arad was the guy who owned Toy Biz and loved Marvel so much because they were his biggest seller. He made most of the Marvel toys. He loved it so much he bought the company. And that's passion. So when you get that passion involved, it can really makes a huge difference. Fantastic Four, I I love the 4. I'm not so keen on it because there's just way too much Pedro Pascal in it. Okay, you got Pedro Pascal. You've got the Invisible Woman being a girl boss. You have the Thing cooking in the kitchen, which honestly Ben Grimm probably would do if he had the equipment that could stand up to his big rocky mitts. And you have the worst part is Johnny Storm is a metrosexual in this thing, so they just didn't get any of the characters right. And did I mention there's Pedro Pascal in this? Dude, please do me the favor. Go back to Star Wars, put the bucket on your head, and go carry Baby Yoda around for 8 episodes, okay? Leave us alone. Having said that, Disney is a company full of corporate guys who don't have any creativity. So all they do is they keep taking their old intellectual properties and they rehash it and they redo it. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, excellent example, took one of the greatest animated movies of all time and just dragged it through the septic field. Re-released it, I don't know why, for Mother's Day. Let's be honest. If you're taking your mom to see the Snow White remake for Mother's Day, that is actually ultimately passively aggressively telling your mom how much you hate her. Okay, so let's not be passive aggressive. I'm hoping beyond hope that these stars are just full of it. They're mouthing off and getting political because it's Rachel Zegler syndrome all over again. And that's Pedro Pascal going out and shooting off his mouth politically. But I am going to watch the Fantastic Four movie, and I will have aftermaths here on the channel. Whether it's going to wind up being worth watching or not, you're just going to have to hang out and find out with me. I'll give it a chance. But the bar is really low on the Fantastic Four project. As opposed to another project that's coming out the week after that, which is the new Superman movie. That's the one that James Gunn is doing. James Gunn, if you remember, was the guy who actually made Rocket Raccoon and Groot interesting in pop culture. He's the one who actually made all these C-list and D-list characters interesting when he did Guardians of the Galaxy. He knows how to tell these stories because he is a fan and he is passionate about these characters and he is interested in these characters. I always get the feeling that James Gunn tries a little harder to get that story across. What he is doing with Superman, we've now had, I believe, we're up to 3 trailers have been released for Superman in the last month. Each one a little better than the one before it. A lot of people are freaking out because the trailers are showing Superman beaten, Superman bloodied, Superman gasping for breath, beaten up, laying there in basically in a giant snow cone. But Krypto comes along and saves him. And now we're getting into the Krypto bots and all the other stuff in the Fortress of Solitude. In the most recent trailer, we saw Lois Lane interviewing Superman, and they're actually getting the dynamic right there, although Superman loses his cool at one point, which is not Superman. But I think James Gunn is trying to make a point here with Superman. Superman is considered one of the has-been characters, even though I've got him right over my shoulder here on the video, and even though I've got the Super America logo right here over my shoulder as well. Even though I have a lot of respect for Superman, a lot of people don't anymore because they think he's old-fashioned. They think he's a has-been. They think he's a relic left over from the 30s, from the 40s, from the 50s, from the 70s, ironically. Superman is timeless. I've talked about Superman being a Christ allegory before. Superman is timeless. He has a place in pop culture. That's not going anywhere. And James Gunn is going to try to take the more toxic parts of pop culture and expose them through how Superman has to deal with them. Okay, because Superman basically becomes the target of a trolling campaign from Lex Luthor. I'm not even going to get into the monkeys in the pocket universe writing social media script on social media posts on Superman. But I will say I'm going to give James Gunn a chance. I think I see what he's trying to do here, and I appreciate it. So I'm looking forward to watching Superman more than I'm looking forward to watching Fantastic Four. But that brings me back to my original point. Warner Brothers is another studio that has no respect for their intellectual properties or their history. Case in point, two cases in point, as a matter of fact, and that's Warner Brothers Discovery, and I blame David Zaslav for this. Warner Brothers Discovery and their relationship with their Looney Tunes franchise. Now, while I was away, there was a Looney Tunes movie that came and went very rapidly, and it was called The Day the Earth Blew Up. And it was all right. It was a love letter to Bob Clampett in the animation style. There are a lot of references to Bob Clampett in there. You can tell it's a love letter to him, but it's also written for 5-year-olds. And that was the problem with the Looney Tunes movie, The Day the Earth Blew Up. The Day the Earth Blew Up is actually a great pun because it doesn't mean that the Earth exploded. I'll just leave it at that. The Warner Brothers was actually going to take this movie and put it on a shelf. It was produced, but they didn't want to release it. Just like they didn't want to release Batgirl. But in that case, Batgirl was a piece of crap already from all indications. And it deserved to be shelved and not degrade the Batgirl intellectual property any more than it already has been. But Warner Brothers Discovery, with David Zaslav involved, just sees no value in Looney Tunes because they are not creators. They are reality TV guys. David Zaslav's Discovery Channel, they have Shark Week, they have Mythbusters, Ice Road Truckers, Swamp People, a few other things. It's all so-called reality television, and I put it in air quotes for those of you listening to it on audio. So they have no respect at all for creative product. Okay, another case in point, Discovery walked away from BattleBots, for example. Even though it was some of their highest rated shows, they walked away from BattleBots because they thought it was goofy. Okay, so BattleBots has had to go on to YouTube and make their own way. So be it. I don't have the full story behind that. I don't know how much of it is the guys at BattleBots and how much of it is the guys at Discovery. But again, if you're not treating your creators with respect and the stuff they've created with respect, all the legacy, all that money that could be made off of those legacies just goes out the window. Good luck trying to find Looney Tunes on Max, by the way. It's now gone back to being called HBO Max here shortly because the guys at Warner Brothers, Chris, we got the scuttlebutt again. Scuttlebutt has it that Warner is ready to divorce Discovery Channel. I mean, Discovery was sitting on a pile of cash. Warner must have paid off all their debts, and so now Warner wants back out because they want to be back in control of a creative company again. And that's not what Discovery does. That's not what David Zaslav is about. David Zaslav dismisses all this stuff, all the Looney Tunes stuff, all the classic Warner Brothers movies. He dismisses all of that because it's not stuff he was involved in the development of or the creation of. So it's not his. He only wants to focus on his stuff, the Discovery stuff. I told you that The Day the Earth Blew Up came out. Came, went, nobody saw it because it wasn't promoted. Nobody knew it was coming. I didn't know it. It actually was out for an entire weekend, and I didn't find out until the following Monday. Luckily, the company that is distributing it actually managed to get a wider release the following weekend So I did get to go see it at 10th Frame. Hi, 10th Frame. Glad you guys are still there. So they managed to get it out there. The same company that distributed that and lost a fortune on it, I believe they paid Warner like $40 million for the rights to distribute the film. They must have lost a fortune on it, but they also have the rights to Acme versus Coyote, which is another Looney Tunes cartoon, but it's not a full cartoon. It's more along the lines of Looney Tunes Back in Action. We have live action characters, and then you have the animated Looney Tunes characters coexisting with them. Acme versus Coyote is where Wile E finally gets fed up with all the Acme products exploding in his face and throwing him off cliffs, and he decides that he's going to sue them for all the emotional trauma that he's gone through over the years and for misrepresenting their products. It's a legal comedy, which is awesome. This is a great concept. I can't wait to see it. Apparently, it's going to be coming out next summer. I'll be keeping my eyes out for it. If you have ever liked Looney Tunes, and especially if you've loved the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote cartoons, you need to keep your antenna up and you need to be keeping a focus on this. Now, as I said, Disney has been driving their IP into the ground by exploiting it because they didn't understand it. None of them are creators. Warner is ignoring their product. They're putting all their legacy stuff up on the shelf because the current management doesn't understand it. Not just because they're not creative, and not just because they're managers like Disney is, where they're just run by corporate guys. Discovery can come up with ideas, but they are preferential to their ideas, and they're the guys with the money, so they're the guys who are in charge, and that's why Warner is trying to escape right now. So it's two studios who are mistreating their intellectual properties, but for entirely different motives. Whether Disney will ever pull their head out of the rump, I don't know. I'm hearing murmurs that Disney is starting to panic because their sources of funding are drying up. I've said before, I believe Disney was one of the major beneficiaries of the USAID funding that was going out to promote all the diversity, equity, and inclusion crap. Under Trump, all that's dried up. Okay, all that is frozen solid and inaccessible. It hasn't been deleted off the books yet, but it's coming. Warner, on the other hand, is just mistreating their old properties because the guys at Discovery are in charge and they don't like that stuff. Warner Brothers were the guys who greenlit these projects to begin with. Discovery is the one that's screwing around. So again, we've got corporate guys who just don't get it. Okay? Contrast to, say, Universal with DreamWorks Animation. Compare to Sony with, look over here on my other shoulder video, guys, the Spider-Verse. Sony has managed to figure out how to do Spider-Man. They don't get it consistently right, but at least they're trying. They're hiring people who are passionate about the project. Miles Morales was a highly divisive joke in the Spider universe up until Across the Spider-Verse hit, and suddenly pop culture sees this and it's like, hey, we like this. We want more of it. And that's how we got Across the Spider-Verse. That's how we got all the other we got another Spider-Verse coming up. There are studios who are passionate about their creations and about their intellectual properties. Disney and Warner are not. Warner is showing signs of getting things better. If they actually do divorce from Discovery, it'd be the best thing that ever happened to them. Disney is going to have to wait until they hit. They're going to do the 70s all over again. For those of you who are who are under half a century old, you don't know what Disney was like in the 70s and the early 80s, okay? For you guys who don't even remember the Disney afternoon with DuckTales, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, Darkwing Duck, you guys who didn't see that broadcast back in the day, for you guys who didn't remember when the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came out shortly after that, because all of a sudden there was a there was actually a market for syndicated animation. For you guys who don't remember, who aren't around for that, you don't realize that back in the 70s, Disney was falling apart and nearly went bankrupt because they were making such crap movies. They were cheaping out on everything. And especially after Walt Disney died and Roy Disney was forced out, everything that came after that was crap because they were basically being run by a bunch of corporate suits then. And so Disney has come full circle. They originally got rid of the corporate suits back in the early 80s. They replaced them with people who are passionate and were willing to push intellectual properties like Scrooge McDuck and Donald. They were willing to push Chip and Dale. They were willing to push Baloo and the guys and the rest of those characters. They were willing to push these characters, and that's how we got the funding to do The Little Mermaid. That's how we got the funding to do Aladdin. That's how we got the funding to do the original Lion King. That's how we got the funding to make all these great movies. And we got the golden age of a second golden age of Disney animation. But all that success attracted the corporate guys who came in, took over, and ran it into the ground. Disney is going to have to do the dead cat bounce and actually shake off Iger. They're going to have to shake off Feige. They're going to have to shake off Kennedy. They're going to have to shake off all these corporate guys who just don't have any passion in their souls at all for their intellectual properties. You're going to have to shake them all out, get rid of all of the suits, and you're going to have to find some people with passion who are going to come in and are going to guide this company into the second quarter of the 21st century. And if it doesn't happen, well, you're going to see Marvel get fire sold. You're going to see Lucasfilm get fire sold. You're going to see all the little parts get sold off because that's all corporate guys know how to do. They know how to come in, tear things apart, to wreck what works, implement a bunch of stuff that doesn't work, and then fire sale whatever's left so that they can slink off with their bags full of cash. So that's all I'm going to have on this episode. I'm just going to say that I hope Superman is as good as I think it's going to be, and I hope Fantastic Four is not as bad as I think it's going to be. But on that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this. If y'all like the show, please like the show. Consider subscribing to the show. Like I said, we're on all the major platforms now. I will have new episodes of The Chore of Duty coming up shortly, where I'll be talking about how you shouldn't underestimate Donald Trump, lessons to be learned from Trump's first 100 days, and we're going to review the 3 rules of BS detection when it comes to watching the media. Those episodes will be coming up in the coming weeks. But until next time, happy campers, Spike, Chris, over here somewhere, y'all keep on geeking out. Love y'all. Night all.